In this episode of The Leap, we sit down with Nick Stehr, Managing Director of HLS Healthcare, a company that's grown from a 3-person operation into a national leader in assistive technology under his leadership. Nick shares the many mini leaps he's taken along the way, from buying the business with no safety net to scaling across the country, and most recently, navigating a strategic acquisition. He opens up about the unwavering support of his wife and business partner, Melissa, the mindset required to lead through uncertain moments, and the lessons he's learned in building something truly special. Whether you're just starting out, scaling up, or exploring an acquisition, this episode is packed with insight, heart, heaps of wisdom. Can't wait for you to listen. Welcome to The Leap, a business journeys podcast where we dive deep into the journey of business owners to learn from their successes and failures. Our goal is a simple one: to help more businesses succeed. Nick, we're live. How are you?
I'm alive.
You're alive and we're live, so that's always good, man. How are things? Good?
Amazing. Always busy.
Yeah. New acquisition recently as well.
New acquisition. That's
very exciting.
Another new experience.
I love it. I love it. I'm keen to unpack it because I actually don't know anyone who's been through this process, and I'm always interested, and it's a hot topic, like we were saying at the moment before we jumped on.
Yeah.
It's the sort of buzzword, the thing at the moment where everyone's looking at that as a.
I think a lot of people are talking about it. Not a lot of people know how to execute it. Mm-hmm. They know, you can learn the theory. That's kind of the easy bit, but I think where people bomb out is through fear, is through lack of opportunity even. But because it's you said it before. It's like you go deep and go hard, and you risk everything.
Yeah. I love it. Well, speaking of risking everything, obviously your journey is, there was you've always said there was nothing to lose, right, when you went into business. But take me back before, like, where did it all start? Was there moments during, I guess, childhood upbringing where you had a desire to do things on your own?
No. Nothing like that. I never knew what I wanted to do. I've spoken before, actually. I interviewed him on my own pod. A good mate of mine that I went to school with, who's a very accomplished, very well-esteemed surgeon these days up in Sydney. But he was always going to be that from the day I met him at 13 years old. And it used to astound me because, and it still does, right? Because I never knew what I wanted to do. Had no idea. I wanted to be a physio for a little while. I thought and then you go, well, what else am I going to do? I never wanted to go to university. So no, I think in true entrepreneur form, you find opportunity, you seize opportunity, and then you exploit opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that's probably what I did. Mm-hmm. Not probably, that is what I did. Something happened that set me on a certain path, that put me into a certain industry. And I think the biggest driver for me was I never wanted to have an average life. And that's not to talk down about that as a life for people. That's quite okay for those that say that's good for me, no problem. But that's not what I wanted. Mm-hmm. I wanted more, and nobody was going to give that to me. I had to go and get it.
It's interesting, right? Because you don't speak to anyone that wants to live an average life. Like, I feel like everyone you speak to wants to make it, but there's very few that actually will risk things and go out on their own and try things and have the balls to put themselves out there.
But the word's risk, right? That's exactly right. And so I think I tend to agree, and I guess I'm trying to be fairly diplomatic about it. But it's like, just let loose. I think people who say I'm okay with that or I'm happy with that, I think they settle for that. For various reasons. They're not prepared to do what it takes. Mm-hmm. Let's not be coy about it. It takes a lot of sacrifice to achieve levels of success. Mm-hmm. And I think even higher levels of success take higher levels of sacrifice. That might be time with your family. Mm-hmm. That might be family events. That might be your weekends. It might be sleep. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't come easily, and not everybody's prepared to pay the price that it takes to achieve success. Mm-hmm. So then you have to grapple with your own brain to say, oh, I'm not really prepared to make that sacrifice. So instead I'm going to tell myself I'm okay with an average life.
Yeah. 100%. It's a really interesting concept. I think for, a lot of the time it's just like I see it all the time with friends that they have an idea and it's just a fear of failure, and it's a hard one to overcome, like changing that mindset to, what am I going to learn going through this process as opposed to, it being failing.
Yeah. Isn't failure an interesting one? If you think back through your life, there's nothing that you did, me included, that I was successful in the very first time I tried it.
Yeah.
I had to fail first to get better at something, yet we fear failure.
Yeah.
Failure's got to be a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Again, it's not easy and not everybody can stomach that, and I still grapple with it. But I go, well, what's the alternative?
Yeah, it's an interesting from your perspective, with your sort of journey prior to getting into business. You were in the industry as a BDM, right?
So go back to your first question, I guess, to give you a bit of the background. Melissa, my wife, and I, we've been married 30 years this year. We're only 48, so you work that out. That's 18 years old. We met in high school. Our first year out of high school, we unplanned fell pregnant with our now son Tyler, who's 29 years old, and now we didn't come from wealthy families, so we didn't have that backing. We had to figure out, what do you do? First of all, I had to figure out, what the hell do I do? Do we get married? Do we not? What do you do? And I didn't decide on my own. It sounds a bit presumptuous, doesn't it? But I decided I would ask, and we did decide that we would get married, and I think if you go back to your question as what was that turning point, I think that was a big part of it. I didn't grow up with money. I didn't have a horrible upbringing. I had a great upbringing, but it was a single parent. Mum worked her guts out just to be able to buy us the cheap Aero Sports from Kmart, so that at least we had shoes on our feet. But I didn't want that for me, and I didn't want it for my family. And so I had to make a decision about, what am I going to do to achieve a certain lifestyle and provide a certain lifestyle for me and my family. And I think that was the spark that lit the fire to go looking. I still had no idea what it would be, but I went looking, ended up. So here I'm 18. I ended up getting a job as an assistant manager in a Red Rooster. I'm 18, and here I am trying to change dirty nappies, and the boys are out chasing girls on Friday nights, and I'm changing shitty nappies. But so I got a job and worked my way up into a store management role, and I was there for 3 years. And by the end of it, I hated it. I hated shift work. But I tell you, it was probably one of the best apprenticeships into business you could have. They talk about McDonald's. This was probably very similar, right? I had to know P&Ls. I had to know rostering. I had to know HR. I had to manage staff.
A lot of employers that we work with, they look very favourably on seeing that on a CV, especially the progression within. It
was incredible.
The business.
I had to go to a store managers meeting every week and report on the performance of the store. So that was at 20 odd years old, I guess, and so that was kind of my apprenticeship into business. I was doing it for somebody else, but I still didn't really know what I wanted to do, because I got to the point where I hated the shift work side of things. I went and worked on a gas pipeline out in central Queensland for a little while, because it was an exit out of what I was doing, and two, it was good money.
Yeah.
But there was a sacrifice. I had to go away from my family, my young family, and do that for a little while. And then Melissa sacrificed, because she then came and lived out in a caravan with me for a little while.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was tough for her.
Yeah.
But she did it.
Yeah.
I'd come home filthy from the days. It was 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and she'd have a cold beer and some food ready for me, and then I think a lot of the boys that were on the job with us would start making sure they came to our caravan first, because I was one of the only ones out there that had my wife, and they'd capitalise on the food that was being prepared. But so I did that for a little while.
What was it like that moment where you had that discussion to say, hey, I'm actually there's this opportunity, it pays more, it's going to help get the wheels in motion to set us up. Like, how was that conversation when you're like, I'm going to move away to try and to help us?
With Melissa?
Yeah.
Oh, look, I tell you, I wouldn't be who I am without her. There hasn't been a time where I've taken anything to her where she hasn't gone, where you go, I go.
I love that.
Even, and not that that's the topic of the conversation here, but with my own mental health battles that I had early on, I broke down one day. I couldn't get into work. And I said, I'm going to Sydney. We were living on the Sunshine Coast. I said, I'm going to Sydney to visit Mum. Are you coming? And her answer was exactly that. She said, where you go, I go, let's go. Within a couple of hours, we were in the car and on the way to Sydney. I just had a bit of a breakdown, but she was just there with me, and that's never been any different.
I think it's so important, and something that people don't talk about, how important it is to have an incredibly supportive partner in business.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said it many times, but if I had a superpower, its name's Melissa,
Wow, I love that.
And because she's just always there.
I love that.
And never falters. So it wasn't a difficult conversation because it was, okay, that's what we need to do next. Because the next thing was...
And she trusted throughout this whole journey, right? She's had a lot of trust in your ability and what your...
Yeah, which is funny, isn't it? Because I don't even know if I'd had a chance to earn it by that stage. You think we'd only known each other for 3 or 4 years, let alone now we're married with a kid, but she committed.
Has her faith in you during those periods helped you grow your own faith in yourself and your abilities?
100%.
Yeah. Is that an interesting concept? I remember...
It's a good question, and 100%.
Yeah, and I asked that because I've said it to my wife before, where she would put a lot of faith into me that I'll make it work and make it happen.
Yep.
And I don't think I truly believed it. And she's backing me to the hills. I'm like, all right, well, if you're backing me, then I best be backing myself.
And who knows you better than they?
Exactly.
So you go, geez, I'm not sure about this. I go, no, you could knock this out of the park.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And then so how long did you spend out there?
About 9 months, I think it was. Yeah. And then same thing again. I just hated it because it was mind numbing. It's not. Yeah. It's not exciting work. It's the same thing all day, every day. It's hot, dirty. Work.
I can't. I know you in a suit.
Yeah.
So I can't picture any of this.
Yeah, the high vis, the yellow shirt brigade. That was it was interesting, and you're right. I was probably a little bit out of my comfort zone. I do have an ability to adapt well to whatever I'm. It's probably what served me really well in sales. I have this. Melissa's called me a chameleon for many years. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, but I can adapt to a situation. If I'm with the yellow shirt brigade, then I can be one of the lads. If I'm in a suit with wealthy billionaires, then that's okay. I'm comfortable there too. So I'm blessed with that as a skill.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously as a director, and I think the most important skill set is obviously the ability to, I think, sell and connect with people, right? And especially with how diverse the market is that you sell into, right? There's so many different people. You need to be able to adapt and get along with all the different stakeholders.
Yeah.
So tell me. So after that, did you move into sales, healthcare?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I got a job offer in sales through a family friend in a small family-owned business in Sydney. So here we go again. I'm going to Melissa saying, "Hey, I want to move to Sydney." We were on the Sunshine Coast. Her family's there. She's 20-odd years old, 21 years old. And I said, I think we need to move to Sydney. I've got this job opportunity in sales. I've never done sales before. Wasn't a lot of money, but I thought it was a significant opportunity. And so that's what we did. We packed the Tyler up and packed the house up and moved to Sydney. for I think I was on about $25,000 a year and a company van.
Good deal.
Good deal. For a little while. And then they gave me the opportunity to earn some commission on top of that.
So there were two roles prior to you starting your own business.
Yeah, other than the part-time stuff in high school and that sort of stuff. But those two roles. And then so it kind of went from there. I spent 2 years there. I got headhunted then by another business, still in healthcare. Moved over there, spent a few years. They ascended through the sort of management levels, if you like. They then appointed me as a state manager in Queensland. So I'm like,
you were still mid-20s by that point, right? And you'd progressed well.
I would have been work it backwards. Probably about 23, 24, I guess. And then they've said, we know you've got family in Queensland. Would you like to go and manage Queensland? So then I'm back. Hey, Mel, do you want to move again?
Surprise.
Yeah. So she does, where you go, I go. And off we went. We packed up and moved back to Queensland for a little while. I managed a state up there. And all of this, and this is the thing you don't know at the time, is that you think about it. I've moved up and down the coast now within an industry making contacts and connections and networks. And now I own healthcare businesses on a national level that's based off the platform of a network that I built through working for other companies across. And so, putting yourself out there and taking opportunity is, I think, such a critical element to building your repertoire or building that muscle of getting into places where you maybe have been uncomfortable before, but you then learn to become comfortable in those.
And it wasn't intentional at the time you built all of these relationships,
Well, the relationship side of things was part of sales and business. That's business and sales, and life is relationships, right? So it was intentional in that regard, but it wasn't intentional because I thought one day I'm going to buy my own business and do that. We were still dead broke.
Yeah.
I had no money. So what business did I have of buying a business?
And when you were in that state manager role, was it something? So it wasn't something you were thinking about even at that point at all, to be like, hey, one day I might.
No.
Yeah.
No.
At that point, did you have confidence that it could be something that you would have the ability to do?
Never even thought of it because I couldn't see a path to that. I didn't understand how that could ever happen. So it was more about, I know how good I am at what I do and I can move into even more senior executive levels working for somebody else was probably the path that I was really eyeing off. Running other people's businesses or divisions of corporations or whatever the case may be. But never at that point did it cross my mind to think, I'd like to have my own business. Because I couldn't see a path to that.
And then how did the conversation come up? How did the ball start rolling?
Well, so before we got that business, they knocked on my door again, the company I was with. I'd been there at this stage about 4 and a bit years. And they said, so Victoria now was a bit of a problem child for the company. And I'd had some good, not me, but the team that we had up in Queensland had some great success up there. And they said, do you think, because I'd had some tenure now with them as well, do you think you can go to Victoria and sort it out? So
Mel was wrapped.
How about we move to Victoria?
There's not many places left. Let's try this one. Yeah.
So we did. We made the move down to Victoria at that time, and so. And as we spoke about before with networks, our first business, which when we bought it was called a Healthcare Lifting Specialists, was a one-man show. Reasonable business, doing good profit, not high revenue, but when you're a single operator, you don't necessarily have to have huge revenue to make decent profit.
How did it come up? Sorry.
So networks. So
yeah.
I had met the founder of the business over the years at different conferences.
Okay.
Wasn't necessarily somebody that I had grown close to, but you meet people, associates through the industry, and you get to know them with the same faces that show up. And so we were at a trade show in Melbourne, and I spotted him as I was walking around and talking to people, and I said, "Oh, how's your business going?" He said, "It's actually going so well that I think I need to bring on a partner because it's sort of growing bigger than." My understanding it was that he started it to provide a wage, not to build a business. Mm-hmm. And so it was growing in spite of that. Mm-hmm. Now, good fortune, good management, whatever it was, but it's like, this is getting a bit big for me, and I'm approaching retirement age, so I need to think about doing something with it. So that conversation happened, and I walked away, and that was the conversation that got me thinking, I wonder how I could get my hands on. That's only a small business. Maybe I could do something. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know how I was going to make that work because we still had no money. We did have we bought a house in Queensland, so we had 2 properties at that time. A little bit of equity there, not a lot. But I knew people and had met people in professional positions, accountants and lawyers and and through your network you say, so what if I'm going to do this, what would your advice be? How should I go about it? What sort of options are there? And the best bit of advice somebody gave me then was get the very best lawyer and the very best accountant you can afford. So I went about trying to find them. Melissa's uncle has been in business a long time, and I spoke to him about the lawyer side of things, and he gave me the name of somebody, and I still use them today.
You got it right first go.
Well, did I capitalise on the people I knew, right? Okay. So I didn't have to test it because it's coming from this is the value of a referral, right? Yeah. It's like somebody I knew said, try these guys. And so, my lawyer, my solicitor, he's still there today, but he's now got his own firm, but I still use him today.
Amazing.
And so, and the accountant was brilliant at the time, and I no longer use him, but a master at what he did and very shrewd businessman at the time, and I learned a lot from him as well.
So the initial idea was to go in as the offer was like to come in as a partner.
Yeah, correct.
And then like a buyout period.
Yeah. So it was great. It was fantastic, right? Because it was a bit of an apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. So it was a 3-year transition. And the deal was we would buy 30% of the business today and buy the balance in 3 years' time, and he would retire.
Okay. And at that point, right, you obviously don't have any experience in doing that, when you haven't been in business and you're talking about purchasing and then paying out, over a period with dividends, and was that, walk me through what that looked like. Was it overwhelming at the time? How did you understand that all?
I think this is where go right back to early part of the conversation where we spoke about what are you prepared to risk, what are you prepared to sacrifice, and for me, you said, you risked it all. I said, well, I didn't really, because I didn't have anything to risk. Mm-hmm. So what's the downside here? Mm-hmm. I can't take nothing away from me. I have nothing. But the upside opportunity to me, I could see. I go,
but see, you say that, but you had, family, Mel, a stable job, houses, and did you have to pull out equity and do all these sorts of things to purchase that?
Yeah, but we were still living hand to mouth.
That's what I'm saying though. It was still, there's a bit there.
I guess. Yeah. So look, I said
you're not living at home. Do you know what I mean? There's people that are scared to do it, and they're living at home still.
Yes. Fair. Yeah.
So credit.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Okay. So it was so you got a wage as well?
Yeah. So that was the thing. And I said, listen, I need to be able to draw this as a minimum wage.
Yeah.
Can the business afford that? They said, yeah, the business can afford that. I said, okay. And then
the numbers looked good, on paper.
Look, he was highly profitable. Look, as you can imagine, one head in the business, I think he was doing maybe nearly a couple of $1 million revenue a year. Mm-hmm. So it was highly profitable, next to no overheads other than himself. So, so that always is going to look good on paper. What I probably have learned since then is you go, but what's the normalised risk on this going forward. It's one thing if I just want to now work for a wage, but if I want to build and grow a business, I'm going to have to invest back into that thing to nurture it and grow it. And so I remember somebody said to me once, another guy who I met a few years later, he said, so what's your plan? I go, I'm going to build this thing. Oh, okay. How are you going to fund that growth? I said, oh, it's profitable. It'll fund itself.
That would have been my answer still to this day.
Yeah, right. Which works for a little while, but it's not black and white. You know, you grow and your margins don't necessarily. Maybe your margins do, but maybe your net profit doesn't stay the same because your overheads go up because you've got to put people on, and you've got to get bigger offices and showrooms and run cars for your staff or your technicians and hold stock, and so it doesn't always work out that, okay, if I'm doing I don't know, pick a number, if I'm doing $2 million with 40% EBITDA, well then at $4 million, I'm still going to be at 40% EBITDA. It doesn't tend to work that way. Or at $8 million, it just doesn't. Now, I didn't understand that at the time either. I didn't understand why. And I do think, and what I've noticed is that you do reach another peak. So you'll go through that trough, but you've got to build the revenue high enough because you get to a point where you've got enough resource there to build more revenue without having to add in a whole lot more.
It's interesting. Everyone, like I always, from reading podcasts, people that I speak with, they always say like 12 through to sort of 20, you need to just get through that quickly. Did you find that as well? There was that
100%
hard part there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Up to 10. You sort of make and bank, right? It's like, and maybe 8. You go, well, it depends on the industry, but at 8, I'm probably making as much profit at 8 as I am at 12. And then you go, why am I doing this? And then you got to try and push through that next barrier. That's so yes, I would agree with that.
So you had this nice period where it was essentially an apprenticeship, a nice handover period, and I'm guessing it grew during that period that you worked there with him.
Yep. Yeah, and again, one of the learnings, and for anyone else that's listening, and take this, is that negotiate early what that second exit's going to look like, because I then invested 3 years building and growing that business from a sales point of view, and fortunately, I had good advice. Remember, but there was a calculation that would offset the value that I brought to that business so that I wasn't necessarily paying a multiple on the value that I had brought to the business.
Yeah. So I would have assumed that, like it would have been done at the valuation of when you came on initially type of thing, like a guaranteed number for them.
Yeah, on a multiple, on a formula, if you like.
Yeah.
So rather than a fixed amount, because that's a bit hard to know, depending on what you do, but there was no incentive there then to grow the business if it's a fixed amount for him. So, that was. So so good advice, thank God. So you've added a lot, from your own business development and efforts, and then that 3-year mark's come, and he's. Yeah, so I think at 3 years we were 3 people now. So there's me, him, and or 3.5. There was, but me, him, and a sales guy that I brought on. We'd built enough revenue to justify. Say, hey, listen, I think we need to put on a salesperson to help continue to drive revenue up in the business.
Okay.
3 years down the track, we had to buy him out, but I couldn't afford it. So I had to go cap in hand and try and get some people to back us again. And raise enough. So we could get enough, the bank would give us enough to get, I think it was 75%, and we had to get some investors come in to raise the other 25%.
Now, 3 years into the business, I'm thinking back to when I was 3 years in, even now, like I wouldn't know what that looks like, where to go. Again, I'm guessing you leveraged off good advice and the right people around you.
Yeah. Well, and this is where it gets interesting because I spoke to some people I knew and one in particular who's still a good mate of mine today said, yeah, I'll back you. He had experience in the industry, which was great, had his own business in the industry, had done very well. And the accountant who originally did the deal was still my accountant. So over that 3 years had seen what a good business was And when I
Well,
went
if
to
he's
him,
investing, if the accountant's investing,
well, this is the thing, right? He's like, Nick, I've seen what a good business it is, and I've watched you over the last 3 years. He said, I'm happy to take the hat around, and I reckon I can get the difference. So those three, ended up 3 guys came in and backed us to be able to get the deal done.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I think I had to negotiate a bit of vendor terms as well, if I remember correctly.
Okay. So what that looks like, giving you money, you giving them shares and equity in the business.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Like during that first 3-year period, right? Was there the feeling that you knew what you were doing? Did you have confidence now that you're like, I get this now? Or was it still, I'm not sure if I'm going to make
Look,
it?
he and I weren't close. We didn't really get on that well, and I'm not bitter about that. It's just the fact. He was a fair bit older than me. I think I'm 30 odd. He's going on 60. But I was always kind of treated a bit like an employee, which is kind of understandable. It was his business, and it's like, well, now I've got to justify myself to this guy. Well, this guy also paid you some money for the luxury, but so it was but again, a good apprenticeship, because he did teach me. That was 2007. So what happened in 2008?
Yeah.
Right. But what I observed was what he did to manage the business through that. He immediately reacted to pricing, immediately adjusted that because we were buying most things through on the euro. The euro dropped through the floor overnight. So, but his reaction time to that was swift and immediate. So those sorts of things I learnt and observed. He showed me a few things as well, the way he managed the unit economics of the business, but also just the cash in the business was very good. And so, I learned a lot from that. Did I feel fully confident? No. But I had my partners that we would meet quarterly, like an advisory board as well. And I attribute a hell of a lot of what I learnt then from them, either from a business point of view or from a governance point of view when you talk about the accountant.
Because it can be lonely. Like I've always found
100%.
that I need to have other business owners around me. Because it's lonely, and often when you have questions, like that would have been really handy being a small business, but having those people around you.
Yeah, 100%. And they had a vested interest, so it was good, because most people are so busy dealing with their own shit, they don't have time to help you with yours. Best intentions, they don't. But when they've got skin in the game, it's a bit of a different story too. So I think it was a stroke of luck that it worked that way, because it forced me to learn and kept me accountable.
Were there any in those early few years any shit, we're in trouble moments? Like, was that moment where you were like, even realizing that you may not have enough money to be able to pay out
the
original founder? Were there moments?
Not so much him.
We make it sound easy sometimes, But I'm guessing that wasn't a very straightforward thing.
No, it never is in business. I think that's just the fact. It just never is in business. So the difference is, what do you're going to get on and get it and just find a solution. And that's, again, the power of people and networks. It's like, I'm in this situation. What do I do? What would you do? Have you been here before? What did you do? So I could go to those guys. And there was all sorts of things. We got some bank finance from time to time, or we put a trade facility in place to help with managing, our timing on when we had to pay for goods compared to when we were getting paid. So our sort of cash to cash cycle could be a bit long. We would be paying, because we were shipping in from Europe, we'd be paying for stock when it landed, but maybe not getting paid for that for another 3 to 6 months, because it was all heavy project stuff. So, getting a trade facility in place, I didn't know what that was until I think probably the accountant said, maybe we should have a look at this. So then, okay. So we go and have a chat to the bank, and we put a trade facility in place. And yeah. So I think having mentors and advisors around you in whatever capacity that is takes away that a little bit of that loneliness or that isolation of, I really don't know what I'm doing here. It's okay to not know what you're doing. You just got to have enough courage to go and ask for help.
So at that we're now, sort of at year 4 where you're basically on your own with the accounts and the other investor, right? What did it look like? Walk me through sort of the growth of the business. Was there a period of sort of exponential, or a pivotal moment where you introduced a new service offering? Like, walk us through what that all.
No.
So I look at it and I'm like, how did you get to where you are now? Multiple states. How many staff now? 38.
Nearly 50.
50. Jeez. So, like,
can you pay my wage bill?
Oh, I don't want to know what it is. I don't want to know what it is. Jesus.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, I look at that, I'm like, how do you get from there to where you are now? Like, give me some things, like some pivotal moments, decisions you made, things you did that, or maybe it wasn't that. There were no moments. It was just, I keep doing right by my clients and,
I think that's a large part of it. The other thing is so many businesses out there turn on referrals or turn on reputation. That's not really a business. That's great that it just means you're good at what you do. You to grow, you need new customers, new clients.
And a way of acquiring them.
So I think that's what we did, is we lent into proactive sales rather than reactive quoting for jobs. And that was the difference, is that we said, okay, we need salespeople. We've got to put some salespeople on. That was probably the biggest thing, because I was driving most of it, and then our sales guy came on. So then I went and built up New South Wales, and then we started putting people on there. Once I got some business there, justified then putting in some people and putting in an office and doing that sort of stuff. So, really pioneering that new territory, I guess, is what I did.
Yeah. Were there moments throughout there? Like, give me some of the big lessons that you learn, or any mistakes that you made along the way.
Yeah. Okay. Probably one of the biggest mistakes was that I did everything. So to leverage yourself out of a business, that's the dream, right?
Did that take a while to move away from being that way? Because I feel like that's completely ingrained in me, that I can do it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the new business that we've just acquired, I'm deliberately not getting into the minutiae of the day today. I'm going to put people in there to manage and run that business, because if I do that, I know what I'm good at and I'll do it very, very well. But then I've got to try and get myself out of that. And that's incredibly difficult to do, especially as a business owner, when you go, well, they just don't do it quite as well as I do, or they're never going to. One, it's not
care
theirs.
As much. Yeah.
Of course not. How can you expect that they would? Every now and again you get those gems that do, and we all want them. But generally speaking, if you can get 70 or 80% capacity out of your capacity out of somebody, then you're probably doing pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's the rule, right?
Yeah.
Like 70-80%, then you should be pretty stoked.
That's right.
Was there something was there a moment you realised that, I need to let go of control? Like, is that, because often I see that's what propels business growth.
I don't know if it was that.
Where it's like,
maybe, but it was probably some of those good senior people. We had a good senior operation manager we put on, who's unfortunately no longer with the business. He was brilliant, but they would come and say, let me do this. It's those people that are worth their weight in gold, provided they're making, wise decisions. It doesn't always have to be the decision you'd make, but as long as it's with the best interests of the business and with the best intentions, you can work with that, and generally more good than bad decisions. But so I think it was people coming to me saying, can you just let me do this, or telling, hey, I don't feel like you're trusting me with this. I've got it. But the other big mistake was not creating and documenting our systems and our processes.
Where are you at with that now?
Still working through it.
Yeah.
Still working through it.
Gives me more comfort.
Really, but so critically important.
Yeah.
Because how can you ever put somebody else in place to do what you need, the business needs them to do, without giving them a roadmap, and then you get upset that they don't do it the way you would do it. Well, duh. Right? So
it's so funny how often it's actually on us. Like,
yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, there were people would come and say, Nick, we don't have any of a particular product. I go, yes, we do. 3rd row, 4th shelf, right in the middle. Right now, I could not tell you what's in that warehouse today. I have no idea. But that was the level of involvement of everything in that business. You can't scale that. You know, you hit a ceiling and you can't, because you have only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a moment that I had around a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where it was like, you know, I was working out how to become more efficient and outsourcing a lot of the administration and, you know, any of the tasks that involved me not talking. Like if I wasn't talking to someone or interviewing someone, then I wasn't going to do it. Right. So like I got that down, and then I was like, all right, I'm at a physical capacity with like how many people, you know, I was doing 6 hours of like phone talk time a day, and then 2-3 hours of interviews. There was like no time left for anything else, you know. And then I was like, okay, we are like, you know, you can either increase your fees or, you know.
Well, especially a business like yours where you're kind of trading time for money, right?
Exactly.
At the end of the day. So, you know, not as much as I don't know, an accountant or a doctor and those sorts of things, but still you're trading a lot of time for money. You're not selling a product as such. You've got services.
So then so you've gone like was there a need, like walk me through the expansion into other states as well? Because that would have been a pretty big
well, when I bought the business, we had some distributors in other states and still do in a couple of states, especially big and difficult states. So you know, Queensland is notoriously difficult because you've got so much you've got this dense population in the bottom right corner of the state, but then you still have this, you know, Townsville's as far from Brisbane as we are in Melbourne, you know, and they've got a lot of population up that way. So it's an expensive state to do business in and to try and service that. So, you know, local distributors is sometimes a good way to go. And like a lot of employees, I guess if you can get 50 or 60% out of a distributor of what you would probably do, then they're probably doing okay because it's never the same as when it's your own product. So, but we are an agent for a manufacturer. We're not the manufacturer. So, and yet some of our competitors are manufacturers. So we still have margin pressure from time to time, and then that's compounded by having distributors because, of course, it's margin on margin on margin. So we started thinking about, okay, if we're going to continue to be competitive, we're going to have to get direct to market in these states. So we set about doing that. You know, I used to spend a lot of time in Sydney until I got enough business up there, as I said, to justify putting an office and people in up there, and then you know, the other states are now part of that plan as well. Queensland is next. So,
and I'm guessing with that, the additional wages and fixed costs is that you get that obviously that backward step in profitability as well.
You've got to look at it as an investment.
Yeah,
you know, and an investment ideally gives you a return, but you've got to make the investment now. And we've had a couple of false starts in both of those areas, New South Wales and Queensland. And so, you know, but if you stop after the first try or 2 tries, well, then you're never going to get there. You know,
so talk to me about that. Like, what were the false starts?
Bad hires. Mainly bad hires.
Yeah.
You know, just not getting the right people on the bus. And so that happens. But you got to keep looking, and it's been hard to find good people.
And how do you? I know a guy. We'll talk about it. But
I'm sure you do. Does he specialise in recruitment?
Oh, I'm fine. But like it's a really important conversation, right? Because like it can change the growth trajectory of any business at any stages, especially, you know, during an expansion stage, right? How did you know it was the person, not the process, not the market?
Well, because I do know the market, so that's to my benefit because I am involved in the business, and so I know the market, and I go back to my network of people. I know people in those states because I've worked those states directly, either for myself or for other companies. And then you look at activity. It's like, well, you're not doing the things I know it's going to take. If you start, we talk in business these days about leading and lagging indicators, right? You go, if you're not doing those things,
the activity metrics, the meetings, the phone calls
that I know are going to lead to a reliably predictable outcome, then either you're wrong or we're wrong. And so we got enough track record to have a good feel for.
So hard with a long sales cycle.
Very difficult. And that's why, and we are still not good at this. We're still working on it at the moment, but trying to lock down what are those leading indicators. It's not as cut and dry for us as how many phone calls versus meets, how many meetings to how many quotes to conversion rate. I wish it was that black and white in our business. And if we were selling a widget, then it probably would be. But we're B2B or B2G in government, and so buying motivations are completely different too. It's not personal for them. So it's not an emotional buy. So how do you sell a premium product to somebody who's charged with the responsibility of hitting a budget?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like I always struggle, like even adapting to, with staff, with my stuff, with recruitment, it's I have a call center brain. So it works exactly like that.
Exactly
where
right.
It's like, this is the target. It's so easy to break down. You need to make 26 calls per day.
Yep.
And if you just convert at the normal rate,
you're going to hit your target.
You're going to hit your target. Pretty simple. You know what I mean? So let's aim for 35 calls so we can exceed it by 20%.
Yep.
Happy days.
Yeah.
But it's just there are so many different levers you can pull and things
so
convert differently.
we can put a quote out there for a few $1,000s or we can put a quote out there for a few $1 million too. So there's no average sale value. You can average it over the course, but it's a pretty broad spectrum, right? And so what we're trying to look at the moment is, okay, how many appointments with key decision makers? How do you get those appointments? There's only so many of them, really. So and then how many quotes are you doing? What's the average value of your quotes? And conversion rate. They're the kinds of things we're playing with at the moment.
And you have to have someone with industry experience, I'm guessing?
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily.
Because it'd be hard to not take over when you're like, I know so many of the key decision makers and stakeholders in those
great point.
states.
Yeah. At least I can facilitate an introduction though. And that's why I say it's not necessarily the case that they've got to be from the industry. It can have advantages, but it can also not. They come with some preconceived ideas, and so I'd rather have somebody with as they say, hire for will, teach for skill. If somebody's prepared to get out and do the work. Young guy we've got now with us up in Sydney, not industry at all, but killing it because he's got the right attitude.
Hungry,
Yeah, exactly.
Real estate guy. They love it.
Yeah.
They're, tenacious, like relentless.
Yeah.
They used to high activity. They're used to a lot of no's.
Cold calling.
Yeah. They build them really well.
Yeah.
And it is such a long grind before you reach a level of even initial success that they generally train really well.
Yeah. Well, we can invest a year to two trying to cultivate an opportunity to still lose that deal. That's a lot of time and money to invest into a deal that you might not get.
Yeah. Because how many sales would they make throughout a year?
Well, again, how many sales? It's some
one.
You could be one that's a few $1 million. It could be five that are a couple $100,000. Hopefully it's all of the above.
Yeah.
And the market's probably a bit subdued at the moment. A lot of markets are.
I think everything,
Yeah. So, but healthcare in terms of our stuff, because we're heavily project driven, there's not a lot of new nursing homes right now. There's not a lot of new hospitals. There's a few, but the boom times were sort of pre-COVID.
Now, was the opportunity, I want to spend a bit of time now, conscious of how much time we've got, actually unpacking the new business that you bought in. was part of the opportunity with what you were saying that things are slower for a lot of in the market in general at the moment? Like how did the opportunity come up?
Well, now we've just talked through about 15, 16 years worth of experience where we spoke about how do you fund growth, how do you achieve growth. Organically is one way, but unless you've got really deep pockets, that's incredibly difficult to do and very slow. You've got all the false starts of did you get the right people on board, and then if you didn't, you've got to start again. And by the time you figure it out, it's probably 6 or 12 months down the track, so you've now lost 12 months. But you've probably lost 24 months because the next guy is going to take at least 12 months to get up to speed. Mm-hmm. So it's a slow, painful way to grow organically. And our eyes were opened really just through going to, I guess, events, whether they were seminars and reading books and listening to podcasts and things. It's like, this acquiring businesses thing, I wonder how we go about that and getting creative ways of how to fund that. And so what we identified was that, we really need to do both. We still need to grow organically and the team still needs to be pushing, but we can rapidly accelerate the growth of the business by acquiring other businesses that are in our field. So we weren't looking at buying a plumber, we're looking at buying other healthcare businesses that maybe are project driven, maybe got more, ideally more recurring revenue than project driven, because that's where we are already. Mm-hmm. So once you make that decision, it's about seeking out opportunities. Where do you find those opportunities? And
there wouldn't have been a broker in your space, I'm guessing.
Yeah, there is.
Oh, there is?
There is. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of brokers.
I knew you wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Well, I can do it myself.
Yeah, and what's their mission? Their mission is to drive the price up as high as they can, and that's okay. I've got no problem with that. But I want to talk to the owner if I can, because I want to understand what's making him tick. Not because I want to. The other thing I've learned most recently is that buy good businesses for fair market value. I don't want one of my coaches is a guy by the name of Adam Coffey. He's done $2.4 billion in exits over his life, and then and the other one's JT Fox. And so working with them and learning that you don't want one of Adam's sayings is you don't want a dog with fleas. I don't want a fixer up. I want a good business turning good profit, and I'm happy to pay fair market value for it.
So high tech, it was a network.
So that one did, yes, it was. But it did actually come through a guy who's not officially a broker, but did have a mandate to represent them to sell their business. Okay. He knew that I was looking, and so rang me and said, I've got a business that you might be interested in. He had two, actually. One of them we turned down. And
so what did the DD look like? Because was that what you were – because it's a little bit different in terms of their service offering. Will you tell me about it? It's a telephony they do.
Yeah, ICT. So, nurse call, access control, CCTV, integrated communication systems, and then the service support 24/7 that goes along with that, because these are often mission critical services that they have in an aged care facility or a hospital. So that was a little bit different.
Okay, so would that be... give me an example so I can understand what the products are.
So if you've ever been into a hospital or a nursing home, there's a button that you press to call for assistance. Yep. That button is part of a nurse call system. Okay. They used to be pretty simple. Press button, get alarm. Somebody comes. Now there's a lot of intelligence and software behind them, and you've got to be able to produce reports and response times and all sorts of things.
Makes sense.
So it's... and tech's a great space to be in, so I kind of like that. CCTV, we know what that is, and access control is again, I think we know what that is. Whether it's through keypads, swipe cards, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So you were presented with that immediately. You like the idea of the...
Well, it ticked. It fit in our buy box. It goes, okay, it's healthcare. It's got about the right revenue with about the right profit that we're looking for. And it's in Victoria, which is where we are. We thought we were looking for, and we are still looking for acquisitions in other states. But I think, given this is the first one, it was a bit of a bit fortuitous that they were only in Victoria, because we don't have to then try and manage teams in other states as we get used to integrating a business.
How many staff do they?
12.
12. Shit. That's how you went from 38 to 50.
Yeah.
That's where I got my number
Correct.
wrong. So that so you do the due diligence. Like, how long is it? A long period of time? Like, what is the
No, we executed pretty quickly.
What does the nitty gritty of it all actually look like?
Yeah, well, the process was about getting a non-binding initial offer in place to go, okay, let's get a confidentiality agreement in place, share some of your numbers, your history. What do you want for the business? Is it fair market value, or are you unreasonable? I've found that these guys were reasonable. They were in the ballpark, and that's the point. I'm not looking for, is it exactly right? As long as it's in the ballpark, then we've got something to talk about. A lot of founder-led businesses have an overinflated opinion of what their business is worth, and I get it. But it's just
emotional tax.
Yeah, well, they go, oh, but I'm making $500,000 a year, so it's got to be worth $5 million. Well, it's not. That's just not the way it works. You can keep working in it and make that. That's fine. So, yeah, getting an understanding of what they wanted. Are they in the ballpark? And
was part of it as well the considerations, their motivations for wanting to sell? How important was that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, why? Absolutely. Do they want to sell because it's going bad? Do they want to sell because there's a change in the market coming? They want to sell because they're losing their agency? Do they want to sell because they're getting old and tired?
See, that would scare me, because it's like they know more than what you can see on paper. They will know that there's a contract or a relationship or something that might be turning bad.
Yes. But that's the whole point of the due diligence process, is to have those conversations.
But there's still a lot of like things you're never going to know. Were there any surprises like after?
No, there hasn't been. We spent a lot of money and good people to do and execute our due diligence. So again, when you get these advisors out there telling you about, buy a business for no money down, it's a load of crap, because who's going to pay for the due diligence? If you don't do good due diligence, then there's a high probability you're going to end up with that dog with fleas, and it takes a long time to recover from a bad buy. So I don't understand. I think it's highly irresponsible to try and tell people that. I
do remember though, you did I think with your son, you helped him get into business.
He started it though.
Yeah.
He didn't buy a business, so
okay.
he started a business. Yeah. He's just sold it actually.
I thought there was there was existing stock or something like that. And
we were looking at buying one, and we were trying to negotiate, but he was still going to have to pay somebody to do the legal and the financial due diligence.
Yeah.
If you got $0, that's you're in trouble, because you're going to make bad calls, because you're right. They're going to know a hell of a lot more than you do, But people who are skilled at doing this, they know what to look for.
They've seen it
which stones to turn over, to look for tax liabilities or HR issues or hidden stuff on a balance sheet that you might not pick up. So spending a lot of money and time through that DD process. They got a little bit of deal fatigue through that, which was, I think, just inexperience, because I think we did the deal in about 6-7 months, which is pretty quick. Yeah.
So deal fatigue usually works in your favour, right? If it's on there.
Can.
Yeah.
Or it can kill a deal.
Yeah.
They might go, well,
I've seen some friends that where it's fallen over, and it's 2.5 years, and it's just, it's killed them. It's killed them.
Yeah.
I'm guessing from, I might finish on an interesting sort of question. I think it's interesting. I can say that myself. I want you to, I'm going to give you a 5-year window, right? You have to start and get to where you are now in a 5-year window with all of the knowledge you have. Is it possible to get to that point? And how would you do it?
Starting with nothing?
Let's say you started from the point of you've taken over and the business partner is now out of the equation and it's just you.
Yeah, I reckon I'd do it quicker now, but I would get partners involved.
So just let's say, what would you do differently to do it twice as fast?
I would find some partners that knew more than I do in the world of buying and building businesses and get them involved. Have a clear understanding of what it is, where we're going and why, with an exit strategy. I think too many owners of businesses don't have an exit strategy as well. So this is what we're going to achieve. We're going to get to this level of revenue with this level of EBITDA, and we're going to exit for X number of multiple. All of that stuff is forecastable because there's industry averages. So you can go, okay, I know what I can get for this kind of thing. And then you need probably some people with some money behind you to do that. And so if you don't have a lot of yourself, what you've got is time. So listen, I'm going to put the time in, I'm going to put the hard work in, I'm going to treat your money better than I treat my own, and this is what we'll do, and we'll go on, and I would go and buy businesses as part of that.
So instead of to do it quick, to do it faster,
Yep.
you'd bring in investors and you'd grow through acquisition earlier
Yep.
on in the piece.
Yep.
Amazing.
That's how I would do it.
I love it. Leave with us. I know you're really big on investing in yourself. Reading podcasts, things like that. Are there any pieces of advice for someone looking to get into business? Any books, mentors, just recommendations? Like where can you?
Listen, I would call out my mentor, JT Fox. So now, he asked me when I first met him one day, I thought he was just a loudmouth American. I figured out he's just a loudmouth Canadian.
Shout out.
I listened to him speak, and I didn't go to hear him. I went to hear Richard Branson, actually. And he was one of the other speakers on the day, and I ran into him that day. Afterwards, he was in the foyer of the hotel I was staying at, and I went up and I asked him. I said, "Are you full of shit, or are you the real deal?"
You asked him that point blank.
Yep. And he said, "I'll never let you down." That was his response. I will never let you down. I said, "Okay, we'll give this a shot." So that was a year and a half ago now, and he has never let me down to date. Now, if he does one day, that'll be a different conversation. But he hasn't.
So and a lot of the advice, like biggest piece of advice he's given you, what has it been?
I would never say any one thing. His business brain is awesome. So you asked me about some of the advice. His latest book is called Business is War. I would recommend that because it has actionable things that you can do in business and finding business. It talks a lot about relationships in business too, because that's bad relationship will kill a business faster than almost anything else. So that's brilliant. So I would certainly recommend him or any of his teachings, and he does a lot of free stuff as well. And his seminars and things that he does are not expensive compared to what I've seen out there. The thousands. And
sounds like a lot of value that you'll get.
And a lot of value.
Yeah.
His business brain is one of the best I've ever seen, and across every industry. And I've seen him coach over 3 days, 90 people back to back, all with a different business, and just be on point in every single one of them. So I would definitely, if not him, find somebody to mentor and coach you. Books, certainly Business War is one that I would recommend. But books on there's I interviewed recently an author who wrote, Gabe Karp is his name, who wrote Don't Get Mad at Penguins. So I would highly recommend that, and that's on conflict and relationships and communication and again really tangible, actionable stuff that you can do. So that's another great one, because if you can't, wherever you've got more than one or two people in a room, there's bound to be conflict at some point in time. And businesses is always going to have it. Yeah. So how do you have healthy conflict is one of those things in that book. So they're the things, a couple of things that I would recommend.
Love it. I'll slide in one more question. Next 2 years from now, what are we going to see? What's it going to look like? What's next?
Hopefully, I'm working through our own exit process where we've built and grown the business. We've said 3 to 5, but in 2 years' time, one of the things I'm working on at the moment is not only actively looking for acquisition targets, but who's a likely buyer, so that I can be understanding. It's no point me building something that's got huge revenue if they want a particular type of revenue or huge profits if they want market penetration, or so understanding who that buyer is going to be, build something for them and what they want, what they're looking for. So I'm having those conversations. So look, in 2 years, there's probably another couple of acquisitions done. We'll be north of, in that business, probably north of 20 to $30 million revenue, and looking for maybe one or two more, and then looking for an exit from there. And I think the exciting thing about that exit is I don't want to retire. You know, I'm more than happy to roll forward some equity into that next play as well.
Yeah,
so,
I don't think you'd ever stop.
No, I'd be bored.
You love it. Yeah,
I'd be bored.
Yeah. I love it, mate. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's
pleasure.
Been a pleasure having you.
Yeah. Good to see you.
You too.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to The Leap. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a follow, or even better, share it with someone who you think will get value out of it. Big thanks to our main sponsor, Ethos 360 Recruitment. It was actually just us sponsoring ourselves.
This podcast has been produced by The Content Engine.